2024 was my year of making it through the classic game series that had been sitting on my backlog for years. And my main takeaway to most of the titles I checked out was that the reason people still ring the bells for games 10, 20, and 30 years later is because of the identity the games created themselves that then hugely influenced the genres the games represent. Final Fantasy, Resident Evil, Silent Hill, and Devil May Cry are among the series I've played that both set the standard for their genres and still give a completely unique experience that other series can't replicate to this day. Walk through the streets of Silent Hill in literally any of the first few games, evading whatever messed up creatures are roaming around with the loud pulsing of Akira Yamaoka soundtrack. Not only is this shit still terrifying to this day, but it's an experience that can't be had, like at all, in any other game. This core sense of identity is what makes these games classics. It's the combination of unique gameplay, presentation, narrative, and most importantly, vibe. These series hit the industry at the earliest point possible and act as a little time capsule to both the technological limits of the time as well as the innovation of the devs pushing the software and ideas of the genres. These games may feel a little clunky or rough around the edges in comparison to modern releases, but the feeling that the classics give and the identity they've cemented is something that can't be replicated ever. The indie horror scene especially has been trying to catch up and replicate what Team Silent pulled off 25 years ago with nowhere near as much success as they had. Devil May Cry leaves me with this exact feel of a unique identity that's kind of a staple of the time but also so forward-thinking in its approach to mechanics, to the point of literally birthing the modern action game through the stylish hack and slash system. Beyond the technical achievement that the games are, my favorite aspect to DMC's identity is that it's just the coolest shit ever. Every idea of DMC's game design feels tailored to this vibe of being so unapologetically cool, which is really something you should get automatically by looking at Dante and Vergil. Especially with the DMC2 Diesel collab, like, are we seeing this shit right now? What protagonist has ever done it like Dante? Devil May Cry breathes such a moody, childish, and corny feel, but it understands how to make this type of shit work so well. It counteracts any awkwardness that could come with it and just leaves this effortlessly cool tone that ends up feeling so honest and well earned. The feel doesn't always hit, especially in something like DMC2 where Dante just kinda comes across as an asshole, but when the vision is more clear, holy shit. The characters, combat, setting, UI, OST, plot, it all comes together to paint this badass creation that's so hard not to fuck with. Even if the games weren't good or played horribly, the core identity of being cool as shit would still be special. Devil May Cry 3, Dante's Awakening, is the peak to everything that makes the franchise as cool as it is, as well as just how insanely good it is. DMC3 builds on the earlier titles' gothic and modern aesthetic clash, while perfecting the combat system and giving Dante the story that his character deserves, as well as crafting one of the best antagonists gaming has ever seen. Dante's Awakening takes being badass to another level, amping all the cool shit in the previous titles to 10, while still carefully crafting an amazing coming-of-age story rooted in the rivalry of two brothers. This is some classic shit, not just for DMC or the PS2 era, but gaming in general. This is literally 3 minutes into the game. Taking place a decade before the events of DMC1 and however many years after DMC2, the Dante of DMC3 is the perfect mix of being this arrogant asshole and also the coolest guy you've ever seen. Take the goofy attributes of one and make it the staple of his character. Tone down the seriousness and have him act completely carefree. Get rid of both of these things, even though they're good in their own right.
Easy, Fido. How about I take you for a walk? Come on, puppy. Let's go.
You'll regret this, you learn!
It's showtime. Come on.
By this point in the series, Actually piloting Dante is already the coolest shit ever, even in DMC2's sterile, gun-centric combat. But having this game's framing be a youthful, pre-awakened Dante just accentuates his I don't give a fuck attitude, adding a ton of spunk to the feel of the game. It's especially important to the framing plot-wise, as Dante's introduction is led by Arkham, a mysterious, totally not evil guy delivering an invitation to Dante from his also not evil twin Vergil. Arkham and Vergil have resurrected an ancient tower that acts as a true gateway to the demon world, being the one that Dante and Vergil's father Sparta sealed thousands of years ago. After Arkham delivers this message and fucks up the Devil May Cry shop, Dante starts making his way to the ancient tower named the Temple Negru, where Vergil is introduced discussing the scheme with Arkham on top of the tower. Ignoring the fact that Arkham somehow got to the top of the tower in the time Dante walked out of his shop and into the street, Vergil comes across as the opposite to Dante, with a very similar sense of confidence. Vergil is much more collected, focused, and very serious. Vergil does give a fuck. He has some sort of desire that has to do with the necklace that they both wear on their necks, and the power that comes from it. Even listening to Arkham rave about the reemergence of this old tower bringing the human and demon world together, which is seemingly what the game's about, he shows no interest besides in Dante being brought to the tower. We're then introduced to the final key player in the story, being Lady. Besides having one of the coolest character designs ever, we aren't really shown anything important with her besides her interest in the tower, although her connection to Arkham becomes relevant very soon. The opening moments of DMC3 so perfectly set up all the important characters, plot relevancies, and general theming. Vergil and Arkham are set up as antagonists to Dante, albeit vague and very different in nature. Arkham being the one delivering the letter to Dante makes Vergil seem like the big boss of the operation, but Dante's reaction seems way too playful to actually take him that seriously, which is contrasted so well by Vergil being completely serious in his discussion with Arkham. Meanwhile, Arkham seems much more mysterious in his role as an antagonist, as he clearly wants to bring the demon and human world together, but for what reason? And why would he work with the son of the dude who sealed the tower to begin with? Is the plan Vergil's or Arkham's? And why should Dante even really care about it when his main desire is just to fuck up Vergil? We then have Lady, who has a connection to Arkham, but is unclear and not sided towards him or Dante, just acting as a mysterious figure, which is really similar to everyone else, but especially Arkham. Taking this setup and running it through the eyes of Dante sets the theme of the game going forward, being a mix of you not giving a fuck because of how cool you are, as well as how insanely arrogant your view is. It's such an amazing way to set up this inevitable character arc Dante will be forced through, as well as the game dealing with serious plotlines with comedy and ridiculous bravado that is the DMC staple. The opening moments also set the vibe of DMC3's atmosphere so well, especially in showing how it complements Dante's story. The previous titles both held a general dark aesthetic, with the moody, gothic mansion of 1 being a direct continuation and embodiment of the Resident Evil roots, and then the modern mix with the city streets of 2. The games have this palpable mugginess that persists throughout their runtime. DMC3 keeps the streak while innovating on itself to match the more angsty feel of this Dante. It's hard to specifically note the change, as the setting is honestly a pretty faithful mix of 1 and 2, being the gothic modern mix, but there just feels like an extra factor that better captivates the emotion of the game. I think it's partly due to color variation, as I think DMC3 better captures emotion and tone with its balance in the vibrancy of visuals, just in a way that's a bit more complementary than the other titles. It's also in part the sort of electric feel this game has, being imbued primarily into the visuals and OST. It's really a slight change from its predecessors though, and if anything, the popular opinion would just be that DMC1 has the best atmosphere. And I think I partly prefer 3's because of the uniqueness that the series further developed after the first title. DMC1 really does feel like if Resident Evil just became an arcade combat focused game that's really inspired by Castlevania, with bits of the horror vibe left over to complement the atmosphere, which is obviously as great as it sounds. But the DMC I really fell in love with was the unique ideas of DMC1 that were fully realized in Dante's Awakening. These ideas that feel unique to DMC also show through the emotion of the story, which is directly complemented by the vibe of the game.
This just keeps getting better and better.
Moving past the beginning moments, it's time to talk gameplay and combat. DMC is known for the stylish action system, combining hack and slash fighting with an in-depth rotation of guns, swords, fists, guitars, that you'll use to build style rank through combos. DMC3 builds immensely on the system established in 1, with an insanely dense attack and ability set per weapon. Starting with the Devil Arms, you have Dante's starting sword, Rebellion, then Cerberus, Agni and Rudra, Nevin, and finally Beowulf. All the Devil Arms have super unique approaches to combat that completely change how you go about fighting. Going from hand-to-hand scrapping with Beowulf into fucking shredding with Nevin in a second of time is psychotic, but it's so perfect for DMC. Each weapon has an extensive ability set that can be furthered throughout the game with upgrades using red orbs, so the way to play and use the weapons increasingly gets harder and harder to master, but also so much more rewarding in play. The progression system also scales with the enemies and bosses, as the later the game gets, the more important it is to fully utilize the entire weapon set. This challenge is then further accentuated by the fact that you can carry 2 Devil Arms on you at a time, so you can decide on when to switch playstyles to complement whatever situation you're in, as well as build upon combos by stringing together 2 different movesets while in the midst of combat. This is all completely different in the Switch version that emulates DMC 4 and 5, where you can just switch between all weapons and styles in the moment. So I'm ignoring that for now. This is how the base DMC 3 was played, alright? Throughout my playthroughs, I usually stick with some mix of Rebellion, Agni and Rudra, Cerberus, and then sometimes Beowulf. I'm not at the point yet where I can go a full playthrough feeling completely set with Nevin. Like, I've used it as a secondary at points, trying to string shit together, or I've used it as a more defensive weapon, but I just don't have my third eye opened yet to be fully comfortable with it. Agni and Rudra is likely my favorite weapon to use overall, as the combo schemes and attack set just feel so natural and swift. It feels great for clearing hordes of mobs, or going from one strong enemy to another, or just wiping out any of the big boy bosses. It's also probably my most comfortable primary weapon to switch into secondary, meaning the mid attack transition from Agni and Rudra to literally any of the other weapons feels super smooth. But this can really be said for all the Devil Arms. I think my playstyle just clicks the most with Agni and Rudra, as well as Rebellion, which I don't think is surprising, as it's likely the most straightforward and just well-rounded Devil Arm. Accompanying his main weapon set, Dante's a set of 6 different styles, allowing for even more diversity in your attack approach. Trickster allows you to dodge enemy attacks and play with a super aggressive no-stop style. Probably the easiest and most fun style to pick up is Swordmaster, just adding an additional set of attacks per Devil Arm you have equipped. Gunslinger, similarly to Swordmaster, utilizes whatever guns you have equipped in your secondary. Royal Guard lets you build rage through perfect parries and charging counterattacks. Quicksilver lets Dante turn into a slightly less OP Dio and heavily slow down time. Then finally, Doppelganger spawns a clone of Dante that allows for 2-man combos. Although the Devil Arms feel like the primary system that's dictating how you play, the combat style is just as important for how you're actually setting up combos and building style rank, as a lot of the uptime to rank and actual airtime of enemies is strung together through the mix of style abilities and gunshots. Switching through your Devil Arms makes the actual button pressing and reaction to attacks feel different, whereas switching your style feels more substantial to your reason for the approach, with why you're pressing your buttons the way you are, and why you'd approach the enemies the way you are. I think the different styles are really where the multiple playthroughs thing becomes really prevalent, because the base idea of spamming Y and stringing combos together with your Devil Arms is pretty consistent throughout all your weapons, even if it feels and looks different, but the style options that are offered change your approach enough to feel a little uncomfortable with the idea of making the switch. Like, imagine it's your first time playing, and you run through the entire game with Rebellion, Beowulf, and Swordmaster, just spamming shit as you go. Then, at like the 85% point through the game, you fight Doppelganger and unlock the style with the same name that allows Dante to literally clone himself. There is just no fucking way you get this far through and are gonna jump from Swordmaster to Doppelganger. Like, I just refuse to believe that.
I don't need you anymore.
In a way, the approach to the new styles is maybe a little discouraging, at least for a new player on a new run, but it's in part why I love the approach taken with the Devil Arm and style set. There is zero feasible way that you're going to fully grasp that Rebellion, Beowulf, and Swordmaster kit on the first go around. Like, to utilize that set enough to beat the game on the standard difficulty probably requires like 20 to 30% of the kit's utilization. The devs are completely aware of this, so the introduction to Doppelganger when you're about to roll the fucking credits isn't asking you to change your style right then and there. It's saying, hey, you got this cool thing you can try now, and then give a real go in a later playthrough. It's in part one of the greatest achievements of DMC3, being this great in-between of a hardcore gamer's game and a relatively accessible action game that will provide newcomers a real challenge. Really, the last factor to the combat is Dante's secondary set of guns that I don't really feel like need to be highlighted as much as the devil arms or combat style. All the guns have usability and importance throughout the game for sure, but it feels like much less of a focus than the other systems. The set of guns are great to complement and continue combos, keep style points running, spacing on enemies, and very specific time frames during different boss stages. But the biggest utilization you'll see of the guns is really through the combo scene and the flying fuckers that are thrown at you every other level. This is kind of how I prefer guns to be used in DMC. With as much of a boring joke that the gun spamming in DMC2 is, there is no way I'm gonna sit here and defend the experience of fighting the helicopter. There's also the DMC5 guns that much more actively keep your enemies in the air for combos, which I also appreciate and like just as much as the DMC3 utilization. But the combat being a little more standard than DMC5's complexity is something I really appreciate about this game as well. The guns should feel complementary and necessary when it makes sense, not absolutely essential to the core of the decisions you're making.
Now this is what I'm talking about.
The two biggest compliments I can give to the combat system is that the balance between complexity and playability is so well thought out and executed, and that the consistent level of quality between literally every devil arm, gun, and combat style is unreal. On paper, the depth of every weapon and style should make both the skill floor and ceiling in this game insanely high, but the complexity really only affects how good you can get with the combat. It's not too difficult to just load in and run around with Rebellion, button mashing through whatever hordes of enemies is in Dante's way. You're obviously not getting through the entire game just smashing your face against the controller and praying, but the base attacks that you can instinctively know to use aren't only super useful in progressing through levels, but they feel and look awesome to pull off. I played both DMC 1 and 2 right before 3, so I obviously didn't come into this game with no background for the combat, but most of my first playthrough of 3 was just using Rebellion and Swordmaster, trying to pick up combos and different attacks that felt right just by trying random shit. Learning the game through playing it and having it be immensely fun, even though you're bad and not doing anything to the extent you could, is very telltale of great game design. As I was saying earlier, this design approach makes DMC3 one of the most replayable, story-focused action games ever, as every time you change devil arm, combat style, or both, you're pretty much having to relearn the approach you need with a completely new and complex direction, which becomes even more challenging as you scale up the fucked up difficulty levels. My second compliment to the combat options has to do with the insanely high level of quality that every playstyle the game allows. DMC3 doesn't have a single devil arm, combat style, or gun that feels bad to play with. And I'm specifically acknowledging how they feel to use, because I think a game like this could easily have an impressive weapon that is just super well designed and has a unique identity, an awesome combo set that could feel awkward in play. Every feeling of awkwardness that comes from the unique weapons in DMC3 is just the shock of being introduced to something new. Like yeah, when Dante starts standing still, strumming a guitar to fight the creatures around him, it's gonna feel a little weird at first. But the second you spend a bit feeling out the attack set and how it should probably be utilized, the awkwardness disappears and you're just left with a new way to approach the game. Outside of the new direction the options bring, the presentation for the unique styles is just as impressive as the actual gameplay. Every style visually looks so different but so insanely cool. At this point, the DMC devs could just give Dante a spatula as his primary weapon and it will look like Guts' Dragon Slayer. Such insane animations, unique color schemes, and interactions with enemies give every weapon flair that accompanies Dante's vibe perfectly. Before moving on from the combat, I feel like I'd be doing a huge disservice to talk DMC and not mention the combo community. These guys have been non-stop with this game and the other titles for over 20 years, and all I can say is that this shit is an actual art form. The same level of prowess shown through these dudes is on par with like top tier fighting or rhythm game players. It's such a grind that requires so much intentionality, knowledge, and execution and mechanics. And it just amounts to a 30-second clip that looks cool as fuck. Like, how can you not respect such a humble grind? I've never been someone to be into the more hardcore aspects of single player games, either through speedrunning or utilization of complex mechanics like a combo community, but as an onlooker to all this shit, I could not have more respect for it than I do. And it would be crazy to not acknowledge that these players are the backbone of older titles like DMC3. For the actual level-to-level gameplay, most of the time is spent exploring the different areas of the 10-minute crew, clearing groups of mobs in every room to continue or unlock a door or item that's needed to proceed. Mix in a couple platforming sections, very light puzzles, being swallowed whole by a whale and having to escape through its body. You know, the normal action game shit. DMC3 reminds me decently of DMC1 in that they primarily take place in a single area, being the Mount Island Castle of DMC1 and the 10-minute Grue of DMC3. A big issue I had with the first DMC is that the backtracking through the castle isn't only confusing, but it's pretty tedious in a not so great way. DMC3 has a similar level of backtracking, which is just kind of expected of the Resident Evil roots, but it's generally less confusing than it is in the first game, outside of one mission early on and then one later on. The issue with some of these levels is that you're really free to explore most of the tower, regardless of where your objective is, and it's really easy to make a wrong turn somewhere or go into some room that you aren't supposed to be in just yet, and then be lost for 30 minutes. It's really only 2 levels that get annoying though, and you do have a map to help you navigate through the tower. It just feels a little less intuitive than it does in Resident Evil, being that this is a combat-focused game. It's also practically my only complaint in this whole game, so it's really not a big deal to me. But shit, I know the attention span of most modern gamers, and I imagine these levels would be really off-putting for people. Luckily, I'm spiritually ancient when it comes to putting up with this shit in games, so running around lost for a couple hours is something I can definitely do. The big highlight throughout the missions are the bosses that appear every 1 to 2 chapters. Ranging from Cerberus guarding the gates of the 10-minute Grue, a demon horse with time manipulation abilities, and a fucked up jester that's practically begging Dante to shoot him dead. The game has a super diverse boss cast that really challenges the way you approach each fight until the end of the game. Most of the bosses are presented as the demons that protect some sort of area within the 10-minute Grue, utilizing a unique moveset and natural element to stop Dante in his tracks. Several of the devil arms and combat styles in the game are just the bosses submitting themselves to Dante after you win the fights, allowing you to use the weapons and abilities from that point forward, which is really helpful to the general feel of progression throughout. I genuinely struggled a lot against some of these bosses through my first playthrough, but I think the fights hit a really nice sweet spot of feeling equal parts challenging as they are fair and fun. If you're consistently unable to dodge attacks, or you aren't dealing enough damage in the windows between the boss's attacks, it's pretty much always your fault, and it's easy enough to acknowledge what's going wrong in your approach. And things never really get too difficult until you fight a certain boss multiple times. If anything, I'd probably consider DMC3 a hard game, but it's nothing too crazy or unplayable, especially with the healing items that kind of trivialize a lot of boss fights. Throughout my first playthrough, I think I used maybe 3 vital stars the entire time, which did make the game really difficult, but it just felt like a more fun challenge to throw at Dante. Okay, it's also kind of bullshit having to re-fight all of the bosses in a row in one of the later missions before getting to the final area, but it's not a real man's game without a fucked up late game difficulty spike. Also, I know you don't actually have to fight all of them, but you're actually insane if you think it's an option to not take them all on at the final stage. It's legit just taunting Dante, like, yeah, you can beat us once, but how about twice, all in a row? You really think you can just walk away only killing 4 of them?
Look, brother, it's been ages, but we finally have company. I see that. We must entertain our guest. You're right. We have to be gracious hosts. What should we do? How do I know? We need to come up with something. Brother, our guest is sighing. Sigh? What is sigh? Well, a sigh is when...
Enough already! How long are you two gonna keep carrying on like this? In case you didn't get the hint, I'll spell it out. You're a guest. Wants to go through. Got it?
Our job here is to guard this pool. That's right. We cannot let you pass.
As if having great atmosphere, an intriguing plot, and the greatest hack and slash combat wasn't enough, the real cherry on top that brings the presentation together perfectly is the goddamn cutscenes. Do you see the shit I'm seeing? We don't have this clean ass action animation in games 20 years later. They can just remove the rest of the game at this point, because seeing Dante show the fuck off in between every level might be better than actually piloting him. The cutscenes take the ridiculous nature of the characters, amps that shit up and makes it the staple of the shot and action choreography, as well as the interactions between characters. They not only deliver the story beats in the coolest way possible, but they also set up the next section of gameplay to be exciting as fuck. From the beginning of the game to the end, the thematic tone of the cutscenes slightly change as the game goes on to complement the character progression, but the I don't give a fuck vibe is the general staple for the majority of the cutscenes you'll see. As Dante progresses through the tower, most of the scenes focus on him encountering bosses, Lady, Vergil, and the Jester, who is kinda helping Dante proceed, but also just kinda fucking around with him.
Or is that too difficult for you?
Get to the point, or you want to keep on dancing?
Actually, I prefer a sword to be my partner. May I have this dance, my lady?
When Dante encounters a boss, it's all about walking into their space and acting like he owns the place. He will legit walk into every single boss room with the most unserious, playful attitude that either forces the bosses to match the vibe or get really pissed at him to fuel the environment. The presentation of these encounters is so amazing because most of the bosses are presented as physical threats to Dante, but under the game's perspective of not caring about literally any threat, the fights end up striking an in-between of just being fun and exhilarating, but not necessarily daunting, which I feel is a main theme of most games that are boss fight centric. This gives the boss encounter such a unique spunk that could only fit a protagonist like Dante. The visual delivery being so on point is aided by the OST, constantly bouncing from the eerie dark ambient to more somber strings, and then the techno-infused rock and metal that accompanies most of the fights. One of my favorite cutscenes that exemplifies all this shit is the beginning scene of the first Dante and Vergil fight. After climbing the entire tower, Dante finally meets face to face with his brother, eerily facing the moon waiting for him. Shameless Oro farm. As Dante approaches, he kind of tenses for a moment, in shock of seeing Vergil, then loosens up and puts on the tough guy act that Vergil would be accustomed to.
You sure know how to throw a party. No food, no drinks, and the only babe just left.
My sincerest apology, brother. I was so eager to see you, I couldn't concentrate on preparations for the bash.
Whatever. At any rate, it's been a whole year since we last met. How about a kiss from your little brother? Or better yet, how about a kiss from this? So, this is what they call a heartwarming family reunion, eh?
You got that right.
The back and forth banter into the tense pan shots of them both, with the music slowly turning into upbeat techno just for Vergil to deliver that final line directly into fighting. Like, try to tell me it gets cooler than this shit. You just can't. There's just so much care put into the cinematography and vibe of the cutscenes, perfectly portraying whatever emotion or feeling the game wants you to experience at that point. Cheesy comedy, badass fights, the most bullshit choreography that you can't help but be jaw-dropped at, directly countered by scenes delivering such genuine feelings of sadness. DMC3 understands how to deliver on all of this shit without it being totally jarring. And if it is totally jarring at points, fuck you, at least it's awesome. At its core, DMC3 is a coming-of-age story for Dante, stepping into his own as someone part devil and part human, figuring out which side of him matters or should be embraced, if any at all. The baseline premise isn't anything out of the ordinary, but the execution on DMC3's story is so tight and well thought out, while also being complementary to every character and individual arc, that it's so hard not to fuck with. Starting with Dante, at the beginning of the game, it's clear that his confidence and carefree nature is similar to things we see in 1 and 2, but there's also this level of ignorance that's much more telling of his emotional maturity and unclear identity. It's even purposeful that Dante hasn't come up with the name for his shop, as he doesn't know what he's fighting for. Dante, being the son of the demon Sparta as well as the son of his human mother, seemingly embraces the human part of him, following in his mother's footsteps and in turn being opposed to the devil aspects that are a part of him. But even these feelings he has are mostly rooted in his rivalry with Vergil and his mother's death from when they were children. Dante rushes to the tower to fight Vergil, not to save humans or minimize whatever destruction Arkham is planning. This doesn't mean Dante is a bad guy and doesn't care about protecting humans. If anything, it's the exact opposite to that. It's more that he doesn't have much reason for doing so, at least that he's aware of. His reactions are instinctive and don't have much direction besides his very fundamental ideas installed in his childhood, which the game forces him to meet by traveling through the tower and interacting with the other characters. Acting as the complete foil to Dante, and honestly the backbone to the entire game, with 3 boss encounters, all at the most pivotal moments of the game, is Vergil. Vergil could easily be argued as the crowning jewel of the DMC series, as well as the strongest aspect to DMC3 specifically. Becoming one of the best antagonists gaming has seen, as well as the rival archetype, Vergil acts as the embodiment to the demon half of his and Dante's family, and the hunt for power that comes from that. As Dante was drawn towards the human side of their family after their mother's death, Vergil took her death as a representation to the weakness in their blood, and humans by extension, drawing him towards the power of Sparta's legend. He obviously isn't as black and white as power equals good and humans equals weak equals bad, which is directly shown much more in DMC5. But the core of both Dante and Vergil is that the split in their family is the core to their rivalry, and as DMC5 alludes to, their mother's death was the pivotal changing point for their strife. While on DMC5, it's probably important to mention that the context that game gives both substantiates certain ideas and character reasons within DMC3, but also counteracts that by showing how the characters change down the line, most importantly with Vergil. I don't think the changes he goes through matter to how he's represented here, but just know I'm only talking about how Vergil is shown within DMC3, with some of the extra context that DMC5 provides to both characters way before the events of any of the games. It's insane that Dante exists and can just exude the coolest vibe ever, and then Vergil exists and somehow matches it perfectly. Dante's constantly running a thin line where it seems like he's trying way too hard, but also not at all, which somehow balances out to the coolest shit ever. And then you have Vergil, who also runs this thin line where he's way too serious, moody, and dark, but also just so fucking cool that it overpowers anything that could be remotely lame. Beyond Vergil's a character, his presentation in this game is unreal. There's such care to constantly make him intimidating and scary, but also kind of understandable and human, which in part also adds to the intimidation factor. It's an aspect to both Vergil and Dante that's really well done in the presentation, where they're both physically and mentally shown as demon and human, as neither of them can rid themselves of the side they oppose. This idea is then directly mirrored to the other characters in the story. Vergil sides with Arkham because of his knowledge of the Temple Negro, as he's the one to clue Vergil in on what's necessary for them to unlock the gates of the demon world, and unearth Sparta's sealed power, which is Vergil's goal to claim. As far as Vergil is aware, the requirements needed to unlock the demon world are his and Dante's amulet from their mother, which is why Vergil sends the invitation to Dante in the beginning of the game, and then blood presumably from Sparta, which Vergil and Dante carry. Vergil also thinks Arkham should be useful to him, as he's already made some huge sacrifices to open the gate himself, but that doesn't pan out very far. On the other side of the story is Lady and her relationship to Arkham. As Vergil thinks he's using Arkham to obtain power, Arkham's doing the exact same thing, except he's really out of his playing field with these guys. Arkham's goal with uniting Dante and Vergil at the tower is to use their amulets to open the demon world and unleash Sparta's power once again. But what he doesn't tell Vergil about his plan is that there is both another requirement to unlock the gates, and that his true intention is to take the power of Sparta for himself. After studying the existence of the dark arts, Arkham became obsessed with the idea of rising above humans through the devilish powers of Sparta, to the point of completely abandoning his humanity to reach his end goal, which directly brings us to the existence of Lady and her reason for traveling through the tower, to kill Arkham. As all the characters are making their way through the tower, we learn that Lady is the daughter of Arkham, and she's on this journey to stop him from ruining more human lives through the pursuit of demonic power. Arkham's first true break into accessing his power was through a ritual sacrificing Lady's mother, but it was unsuccessful in the end, leaving him with the fucked up scars on his face. He had a reason for sacrificing Lady's mother though, and it wasn't over him just, hating his wife or evading child support or anything like that. Lady and her mother are both descendants to the woman that Sparta used in its initial ritual to close the demon realm, which brings back the final step that Arkham is keeping secret from Vergil. Besides the necessity of the amulets that hang on both Vergil and Dante's neck, as well as the blood that flows in their veins, the final step in activating the 10-minute Gru and unlocking the demon world is through Lady's blood, who is assumedly the only living person with the original blood that was used in the ritual. Arkham knows this and purposefully leads Lady into the tower as he knows she's on the hunt for him. This guy he's really the worst, like he's just horrible. Lady's resentment for Arkham goes beyond the act of killing her mother though. That's the obvious reason for her hunting him down. But the larger picture that Lady's taken from this is her hatred of demons and the idea that they ruin what humans find importance in. Besides Lady needing to kill Arkham, she also needs to kill every demon she can, ridding the world of everything that opposes humanity, so nobody will have to go through what she did when her father abandoned all of his human ties. This directly makes all of Lady's interactions with Dante incredibly hostile throughout the tower, as she eventually finds out that he's clearly a demon and can't be trusted. Not that literally any of that affects how Dante acts towards her, as most of their interactions are just some kind of fucked up flirting.
Cause I make it a point not to go out with women who shoot me in the head.
Date a demon? I'm not that desperate. Besides, I really don't care for guys who stink like blood.
You're right.
Now that every character and their motivations have been laid out, the real good shit is with how the two different sides of the story are constantly affecting one another. At the core of the two sides of this game is the relationship between human and demon, and how they are naturally at odds, most importantly through Dante's eyes. He moves into the tower with the intention of finding Vergil and stopping whatever he's planning, but through his interactions with Lady, Dante finds the meaning behind his opposition of Vergil. Through their initial meetings, it's clear that they're both more in each other's way than anything else. Dante will keep up the flirting and he'll waste both their time for a bit, but neither of them have a ton of interest in helping or understanding each other. Not that Lady would even be able to kill Dante, but fuck, she tried to end his bullshit several times. As they continue through the tower, Dante learns about Lady and her relationship to Arkham, as well as her goal to stop him. His perspective on what's happening in the tower slowly changes because of this. He needs to stop Vergil because that's what's instinctive to him, but he also views the damage that demonic powers can have on innocent humans. Lady's world was completely destroyed by the pursuit of these powers, with Arkham's desire for them overruling everything. Dante and Vergil resemble the different halves of their bloodline, but neither of them can fully rid themselves of the side they oppose. This automatically makes the relationship nuanced and confusing to Dante, but what's more clear to him is how he views Lady, who is a complete embodiment of the human half of the story, doing everything she can to end demons and protect the weak and innocent nature of humans. As well as Arkham, being a complete view of the bad that comes with the power of devils, completely abandoning everything that held him to humanity just for the search of this power. All of this is thrown directly into Dante's face, and it's the only thing that makes him go, shit, maybe there's more to what I'm doing here. Dante looks at Lady and is reminded of the values his mother instilled, then looks to Arkham and is reminded of why those core values need to be protected. We slowly see Dante become more sensible to this, and lose a bit of the arrogance throughout the game. His view becomes more focused, his intentions more clear, his interactions much more heartfelt and serious. His character is never lost throughout, his bravado shows right until the final fight, but the progression he goes through is so palpable and natural to the events of the game. Dante will stop Vergil from reclaiming the power in their blood, but he'll only be able to do that after putting an end to Arkham and protecting the human side within him. Similar to Dante, Lady's progression is directly based on her interactions with him throughout the tower. She doesn't really come to as much of a huge change in character or self-realization as Dante does. Her idea of hating demons and ridding them of the human world stays consistent at the end of the game, but she's able to slowly relearn and accept the human emotions that she felt she lost through Arkham's betrayal. Lady needs to kill Arkham because his desire for demonic power is what took away the human innocence that she once had. Her goal isn't to regain what she lost, but to protect others that could go through the same thing. Part of her never left the idea that Arkham could still come back to humanity though, and by extension return the innocence that Lady lost. I mean, would it really be that hard to just blame everything on Vergil and move on from there? Like, he really does not look like a good guy to me. Arkham obviously thinks this, and Lady falls into this trap because of this part of her that's still wavering. It becomes immediately clear that it was just a trap though, but the point Lady reaches through this is that she can no longer find humanity with or through Arkham. Seeing Dante express and embrace his human nature throughout the game is the only way that Lady is able to actually regain what she lost. As seeing Dante, who might as well be solely a devil through Lady's eyes, show human compassion far beyond anything Arkham ever could, was the only way to change her perspective on how she could possibly come out of the tower. Dante and Lady only reach their conclusions on why they both oppose demons through their interactions with each other, and it's the only way they're able to meet both Arkham and Vergil through.
Dante. Please. Free my father.
I will, lady.
After Arkham reveals his big master plan at the midpoint, he's able to temporarily throw everyone astray as he activates the ritual and opens the demon realm, with the entrance standing tall at the top of the tower. Lady, Dante, and Vergil all scramble to the top to stop Arkham from fully taking Sparta's power. This is also where Arkham reveals that he's the jester, and his fucking with Dante was just another way to strategically move him to where he needed to go, which I guess was definitely effective at the cost of making him look like this. As they all make their way back to the top of the tower, Lady and Dante have their final encounter as adversaries, and even though this shit is low-key the worst fight in the game, it's a great moment showing both of their changed perspectives heading into the final fights. Dante leaves Lady and picks up the mantle as the one to take down Arkham, heading to the top of the tower and entering the newly opened realm to the Demon World. The levels in the Demon World leading to Arkham are insanely cool, being this super bright and weird transition from the darker moodiness that pervades the entire game prior. Also accompanied by some of the wackiest fixed camera angles in the game. We gotta bring this shit back, this is too good. I wouldn't try to fight these dudes either, but going through this stage, they look cool as fuck. Before getting to the real final fights, Dante's tasked to run the boss gauntlet that I was complaining about earlier. Although this shit feels a little tedious coming to the very end and having to fight through most of the bosses you've already beat to progress, it actually acts as a great skill check before you die 50 times to the big boys ahead. A little victory lap before Vergil reminds you of who you're really trying to deal with.
Scum.
As Dante approaches, we get a glimpse of Arkham wielding Sparta's Force Edge in the Demon Realm, harnessing his powers and becoming the physical embodiment of Sparta himself. Dante challenges him to the final face-off, and gets in a cheeky little comment about Arkham's interference in everyone's family matters. Maybe a bit on the nose, but it's coming from Dante, so he's allowed to do that. Arkham responds by making his official claim to the power of Sparta, and as he does this, his form breaks, melding into some fucked up, grotesque blob of arms and legs. Coming from the human who tossed everything connecting himself to humanity in the trash, this is the only fitting final form for him to take. Something so far from any semblance of his past self, just a complete ugly mess of a demon thinking he's achieved the peak he's climbed towards. But as Vergil alludes to throughout the game, no one can handle Sparta's power outside of the sons carrying his blood. Arkham, the most unforgivable and ugly embodiment of the human view of demons, being propped up as this faux master manipulator, is ultimately and obviously doomed to lose to Dante at the end of the game, but even more fittingly, doomed to lose to both sons of Sparta. Halfway through Dante slashing the extremities of Blob Arkham, Vergil comes to share the spotlight and fight side by side with Dante as they finish off the fight, reclaiming their family's stolen power.
I'll try it your way for once. Remember what we used to say? Jackpot.
I mean, what can I even say? This is just chills. It does not get better than this. Our final moments with Arkham are set lying in defeat against Lady, giving his final plea as she unloads beyond the full clip into him. leaving this part of her life behind her.
I thought I wasn't gonna cry.
I think this scene feels a little unnecessary at first, as it feels like Dante shouldering the responsibility earlier already insinuated every story implication that this shows, but I think it ends up being a really cathartic and deserved display of every emotion Lady's repressed thus far. Following up to the prior scene where Arkham's able to pin the blame on Vergil and briefly take advantage of Lady's part of her that wants to believe in humans, we're shown her changed perspective and ability to move on from the part of her that's bonded to Arkham's existence. It's also innately a very human response to what she ends up doing, which is accompanied by a very similar response that's soon to come. One final aura off to send this shit to the credits.
Give that to me.
No way. You got your own.
Well, I want yours too.
What are you gonna do with all that power, huh? No matter how hard you try, you're never gonna be like Father.
We're wasting time!
We are the sons of Sparta. Within each of us flows his blood. But more importantly, his soul! And now, my soul is saying it wants to stop you!
Unfortunately, our souls are at odds, brother. I need more power.
And we're supposed to be twins.
Twins. Right.
Both brothers unable to see eye to eye. Dante finding his reason to protect humanity through his opposition with Arkham, while still being able to acknowledge and harness his demon side through his devil trigger. And Vergil completely unwavering in his goal for power, going all out in his quest to reclaim and ignite what Sparta left for him to take, facing off with each other for the third and final time. Everything leading up to this point, the stage perfectly set for the rivalry to conclude, the only true ending to Dante's awakening. The build up to this final encounter is insane, and the fight itself delivers on everything you could ask for. I said earlier that DMC3 is a hard game overall, and honestly the only reason I'm comfortable calling it hard is because of these Vergil encounters, especially Vergil 3. This fight is really difficult. Vergil has a dense moveset, incorporating old and new moves that all hit like a truck, long combo streaks you gotta learn to dodge, frequent momentum shifting parries, and a devil trigger that just accentuates all that shit that he activates multiple times throughout the fight. Playing this with no heals, which I was doing for no good reason, was not easy, but it's one of those fights that's just so incredible that you don't mind mashing your head against it 50 times before you get it down perfectly. The fight feels so tuned to push your ability usage and understanding of the game's mechanics to the max that you could, given your first playthrough that is. Outside of the actual fight, the presentation to this encounter could not be better. Such an awesome final arena, being this waterfall to the depths of the demon world with this ominous sun eye thing. It makes it feel like whoever loses this battle will just instantly be smited by some higher being and sent to hell. The cutscene prior to the fight taking place also has my favorite line delivery in the game, being Vergil's "I need more power." This is the finale of his character arc within DMC3. One simple line that details all his reasoning, actions, and struggle. His inability to see what Dante has. His opposite perspective of why bad things happen to the humans of this world, and why his claim to demonic power is how he needs to gain strength. The angered close-up as he tightens his hand into a fist, showcasing all of his intensity being brought to this one final declaration. The rising music spinning off into this intense final boss theme. It's such an insanely powerful scene that plays off every strength Vergil's character has. His intensity is partly juxtaposed by this pretty somber vibe that the actual fight has, both with the moodiness of the arena and the slower hymnal tones that show up in the OST. It gives off the feeling that Vergil is fighting a fight he's already lost. Following Dante and Lady throughout the game, the narrative heavily leans into them, and humans by extension, being the righteous ones in the split identity that Dante and Vergil represent. The narrative rewards Dante for changing his way of thinking, and punishes Vergil for never changing his direction. This isn't something Vergil is aware of, or believes in though. His entire approach to this fight is that he will be taking this power, and that Dante's weakness is the crux of their bloodline. So all the somberness that's shown through Dante's perspective of this fight is offset by Vergil's cockiness in the first cutscene, his relentless aggression throughout the battle, the various insults and grunts he throws Dante's way while trading blows. Vergil is doomed to lose this encounter, but he never lets his character or goals break throughout the entire game, and he's sure as fuck not gonna let them break now.
Dante. Am I being defeated?
What's wrong? Is that all you got? Come on, get up. You can do better than that.
The human world is closing, Dante. Because the amulets have been separated.
Let's finish this, Vergil. I have to stop you. Even if that means killing you.
No one can have this, Dante. It's mine. It belongs to a son of Sparta. Leave me and go, if you don't want to be trapped in the demon world. I'm staying. This place was our father's home.
Vergil falls and accepts his loss, but never admits his wrongness in his pursuit for power. If anything, he further accepts the demon side of him by returning to the world that Sparta originally hailed from. What happens to him down there, well, let's just not focus on that. The point is that Vergil's unwavering nature is what brings the final fight to its end, perfectly concluding the main confrontation of DMC3, and cementing himself as one of the best to ever do it.
You're still here.
I need that back.
No late charges, I hope?
I'll think about it.
We should be fine for now. But I'm sure they'll be back soon. Very soon.
Are you crying?
It's only the rain.
The rain already stopped.
Devils never cry.
I see. Maybe somewhere out there, even a devil may cry when he loses a loved one. Don't you think?
Maybe.
With that, Dante's awakening comes to a close with the most self-aware, cheesy lines that are delivered as the highest brow poetry ever made. And fuck, it could not come across better than it does. Dante and Lady come out the other side with as much bravado as they had going in, but both hugely change in their perspectives on demons and humans, leaving the two people behind that bound them to their old view. Devil May Cry 3 is a really special game, and although I do think it's the best of the DMC series, as well as just one of the best games ever, there's a lot of interesting stuff to talk about with the later and earlier titles, so maybe I'll get to talking about one of them in a future video. Also, I should mention that I've been making this video far before the Netflix series was released, and I'm aware that it's somewhat around DMC3 timeline-wise, but I haven't watched it and don't care to talk about it, especially with the discourse I've seen. Like, how the fuck is this even happening? Thanks for watching if you made it this far. I plan to continue making videos about games and other cool things I like, so if you're interested in that, stick around.